But then once you start thinking about what this place used to be and how people lived here and what they used these rooms for, then it starts to take on a life of its own. And that's ideally how you want to build your dungeon, is think of its history, what was it originally built for, how did people use it, and what did they do when they lived here, and what kind of rooms would they have needed. And now that I have these 4 different wings of the dungeon completed, I'm going to connect them all with large hallways. This helps create the looping and branching paths that are so necessary for the exploration part of the game. Now that I've completed those hallways, I've given myself large blank areas in between those loops. So now I'm going to fill those in with a few more rooms. And then while you're planning your dungeon, you can think about what these rooms are relative to the 4 quadrants that we already developed. So these rooms over here near the temple area might have been lesser shrines to other deities. Because this is a polytheistic fantasy setting, you might have a large temple dedicated to one god and then surround it with smaller shrines dedicated to other gods. Lastly, we have this large open area, which I'm going to make the servants' quarters. And then I'm going to add a bunch of secret passages because of the people who lived in this fortress believed that servants needed to be out of sight, out of mind. And that gives us a simple historical reason to have secret passages everywhere. Then in the middle of the servants' quarters, I'm going to add a sitting room. Maybe each of these 4 rooms slept 2 or 3 servants, and then they had a common room in the middle. This design also prevents things from always being so square. So there, that finishes the dungeon, and now I'm going to export it so you can see the whole thing in one wide view. Now it's just a matter of adding the entrances and filling it up with monsters. Now when it comes to monsters, everything I've been talking about so far is what this fortress used to be, how these rooms were designed and what they were designed for. But that doesn't mean the fortress is still being used that way. But now it's ruined and there's been new inhabitants. This is what really makes it a dungeon. So maybe that top quadrant was originally the wizard's laboratory, but maybe now a group of ettercaps live there and they shepherd their giant spiders, and those giant spiders are mutated by the residual magic that was the wizard's laboratory. And maybe the great hall and the throne room are now occupied by a tribe of goblins led by a group of bugbears. And now a pair of bugbear sisters sit on the thrones that used to belong to the baron and the baroness. And maybe the top quadrant is haunted by the knight who failed the baron and the baroness and failed to protect the family, and now he's cursed and roams the hallways in endless torment. And then recently, a cult has decided that they want to take over this fortress and cleanse the temple and restore it to its former glory. So that bottom right quadrant is now full of these cultists trying to fight back the ettercaps and goblinoids. So that lets you see how having a history of a place can lead to a story, and that story can lead to new events, and those new events can help you define what's living in the dungeon and why they're there now.